But as time went on, the police didn't ask Jesus and James about John. Instead, they asked each man more about themselves. And the reason that the investigators were suddenly now treating them as suspects was because they had learned something very important. Both men had criminal histories, and not minor ones. Both were actually convicted on the registry. On top of that, Jesus, who also went by Manuel, wasn't in the country legally. He had been deported at some point in the past, but he was able to make his way back to Dallas somewhere along the way. And those past convictions mattered, because to investigators, it showed that both men were capable of harming people in the right circumstance, or under the right circumstances, I should say, and that if they were willing to hurt someone in a sexual way, who's to say that they weren't willing to hurt someone in a physical way or for some money? Maybe there were no boundaries. So that became the working theory, that John might have hired them to kill Laura. Then, on the day of the murder, John could run errands, he could show up on security cameras all over town, he could build himself an airtight alibi, all while he knew his employees, his friends, were handling the dirty work. John could give them the keys, the garage code, the code to the safe, full access to make it look like a robbery. Then, after Laura was already dead, they could meet back up with him and show up on some of those cameras too. And the timeline? I mean, it made it at least seem possible. Laura died sometime before 8:30 a.m. at the very latest, and neither man joined John at Home Depot until around 9:45 a.m. So that was more than enough time to kill her, still drive over into Dallas afterward, and show up on footage. Now, long story short, at least on paper, they didn't have much in the way of alibis, just their word. And of course, when the police interrogated them, they both swore up and down that they were completely innocent, that they had nothing to do with this.
You said this twice, that Manuel went to your house about 8:30, 8:45, but I've got information that puts Manuel somewhere else.
Yeah, just be honest.
That time frame. Not at your place.
He was at my place.
I have proof that he was not at your place that early.
That's what time he was at my place.
I'm telling you, I've analyzed everything. He was not there.
James even gave police permission to search where he was living, which was not a house and not an apartment, but rather a hotel room. Now, during that search, investigators found multiple cell phones, a pair of tennis shoes, and a backpack. Now, inside the backpack was a Ziploc bag full of latex gloves. So, not exactly the most innocent-looking discovery, right? And honestly, it was surprising that he hadn't tried to get rid of all of that before, considering that he consented to this search, right? It also didn't look good when police searched their phones, because on the day of Laura's murder, Jesus got a phone call from John at 7:45 a.m., and this call lasted only 1 minute, so it wasn't a very long conversation. And then, right after that call, Jesus went to their town, their suburb town, and not just anywhere in the town, but he was in the vicinity of Laura and John's home during the exact window when Laura got home from school and was murdered. He was there around 8:15 to 8:20 in the morning. So, I mean, what were the odds of that? Now, keep in mind, John was long gone by then. His own phone data showed that he left the house at around 7:30 a.m., so it wasn't like Jesus was meeting his boss or going over to his friend's house to pick something up or grabbing something for work. He was right near Laura at the time that she was killed. But even with all of that, police still didn't have enough. All they could prove was that Jesus was in the area. And on its own, that wasn't proof of murder. Not enough to arrest, not enough to charge, and definitely not enough to convict. They knew they needed more, which meant that the next step would be trying to get someone to talk. And the investigators believed that they could get Jesus to confess, or at least scare him enough into slipping up, and that they could do that by using the leverage that they already had. Which you'll remember how I mentioned both James and Jesus had past convictions for crimes of a sexual nature. Well, Jesus was supposed to register on the, official registry and notify all of the neighbors, the whole 9 yards, and he never did that. So even though the police couldn't arrest him for murder or for anything tied to Laura, they could arrest him for failing to register. And that's what they planned to do on December 17th, 2015.